So we move on to the next presentation by Jeffrey Roberts.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. I had some technical difficulties this morning. My internet cut out about 20 minutes before the session, so I had to run to the office.
Perfect.
Screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So good morning or good afternoon to you all. My name is Jeffrey Robert. Kevin Boyle, my co-author, is not here today to present with me, but we are discussing student engagement in the era of COVID-19. And today what we're looking to discuss is basically three major themes. The first theme being student engagement in a virtual classroom. How do we promote it? The second theme is improving the effectiveness of virtual teams. And our third theme is rethinking the virtual industry member participation. So a guest speaker, somebody that has experience. Before beginning our discussion, I just want to describe a little bit of our conversation that we had internally in our department for a selection of a classroom, what we called modalities. So this was the physical versus the digital level of instruction. And what we had at our university at Virginia Tech was a conversation between safety, health of students, and then there's also a financial concern. So the health, whether a student has underlying conditions that we're of course concerned with, the safety concerns not only from the students, but also the faculty themselves, and what happens if either party contracts the virus. And then this last consideration, the financial concern, was for the majority of students having online courses, if their choice was to remain at home for a semester and save on room and board because of a financial consideration. We do have technology limitations. Like I mentioned this morning, my internet stopped working. So students can have that as well, yet they might not have the ability to go to an ancillary or a secondary marketplace. Where we are located in rural Southwest Virginia, broadband tends to be a challenging consideration for us. So those of you who have universities in somewhat more rural areas might experience that type of connectivity problem as well. I believe it's already come up about having cameras on and videos on and some of the bandwidth considerations there. And our third issue was the administrative workload. Bifurcating or separating a class into multiple components, whether that's a physical in-class component with an online application as well, doubles the workload for the faculty member. And so some of the constraints that we have on ourselves was an issue as well. So that's why in our department, we ended up selecting a synchronous classroom structure that was fully online, but recorded, so that if a student missed the class because of a health issue, they could pull down the video and watch them and obtain the content later. We specifically for this conversation wanted to focus on three classes or three courses in our program, all of which are 3 credit hour classes, all of which are around 50 to 70 students, and yet they are at different points in a student's career. The first, the middle, and the last aspect of their collegiate career. I will mention that our real estate studio class is a year-long 6-credit course that encapsulates a development project from inception, a greenfield land, all the way to development. And it is a team-based project class. So even with 70 students in this past semester, we had 14 teams. And there are some challenges with online teams that we'll be discussing in this presentation. So to begin, student engagement in a virtual classroom. I want to discuss the academic challenges and then some of the solutions that we were able to find and hopefully that you would be able to apply. So the first academic challenge is the distraction. So whether or not that distraction is at home, if it has some ancillary place, I've seen students travel to Starbucks to get out of their apartment and to try to find a different venue to listen to a class or to be a part of a synchronous class. And those distractions can be very prevalent to a student and distract from the overall engagement in the class itself. What we have found that instituting polling in the course, it doesn't reduce the number of distractions, but it does give the student a more opportunity to engage in the content and push out the distractions themselves. So I've listed here 3 different applications. So Kahoot and Menti are both paywall services that you can use outside of whatever platform you have, whether or not it's a WebEx, a Zoom platform. Those have built-in polling. Kahoot and Menti, they give a little bit more gamification aspect to the polling and also provide additional question types. Another challenge that we have is inactive attendance. The way that we have defined inactive attendance was students logging into a Zoom meeting or any type of online platform, muted screen, muted camera, muted mic. There's no engagement, there's no connection in a group chat. Basically, the student is there in name only. And what we've tried to do is add exit submissions, exit tickets, however you describe that term, to have at the end of the class some requirement for the student. It could be a quick multiple choice question, free response, something that's graded quickly, graded easily, just to encapsulate the main point for that class itself. Also, active breakout sessions have helped promote student engagement and lessen this inactive attendance model. Now, I will mention that breakout sessions, yes, it does take more bandwidth, but they also require monitoring. If we create a breakout room and just say, go to it, without very much structure or prompts or even monitoring themselves, students tend to lose interest quickly. It does help being able to move in between groups. Yet if there are 14 groups and you spend 2 minutes with each group, that's a long amount of time dedicated to this class breakout session. So my advice is to provide some requirement that a student submits at the end of the class, whether it's graded just as a completion-based agreement or it's broken out further. Lastly, we have silent viewing as another challenge. Silent viewing could be a camera is on, yet the student does not engage. It's almost like watching Netflix. The student views the content, but there's no engagement, and that reduces overall understanding and learning. So we've created structured case studies. So our structured case studies relate our real estate content to some aspect of what the student may be interested in. In real estate, we're very lucky to have the student's perspective of the built environment. And we can leverage that. Wherever they live, where they came from, they know their areas. And we can build off of that individually and create these case studies to leverage that knowledge and also that interest level. Moving into the second theme of our presentation today, virtual teams. So there are challenges to virtual teams. There are challenges to physical teams as well, but they're even more so on the virtual side. So 100% digital communication. When students are physically in a class, they may communicate the best way to provide contact information. In the United States, we have federal regulations that preclude us from providing certain levels of contact information for other students. So the physical component of that, students in the classroom being able to have contact from other students, is a lot harder digitally. There's a lack of accountability. Students can not see emails. They can avoid meetings. And then technology limitations, especially for disability students. Sight, auditory disabilities can be very difficult to navigate for other students themselves. However, there are benefits, and I do want to mention the benefits just so that we can promote the use of teams. You can see them listed on the screen here. I would say that the best reason for teamwork in our classrooms, again, is this geographic diversity of thought and of opinion. Being able to describe and provide different avenues for students to explore the content can be very beneficial for them. So to improve virtual teams, what we are advocating is to communicate precise expectations before teams are created. Front load what you expect the teams to produce, how you expect them to operate, and encourage open discussion for the teams themselves. Some students, depending on where their career is in their academics, really struggle with engaging other students on the difficulties of interpersonal relations. Those are life skills that we do need to expand upon in addition to the content themselves. And then finally, scheduling periodic team submissions and even virtual meetings that we do in our studio class, our capstone, truly helps keep students and teams on task and provide a quality deliverable at the end of the semester or throughout the semester. So periodic scheduling helps them. It helps communicate additional expectations, and it allows you to remedy any type of team dynamic issues. Finally, our last theme is integrating virtual industry members. So these are guest speakers, professionals that may come into a classroom. So again, I just want to discuss a few of the challenges, but then really give you the benefits, because having industry members in a classroom improves student learning. There's quite a bit of literature on that, and you can see additional levels of engagement from the students with industry members. So with any other lecture, video, the perception can be that industry members are giving just another lecture. The quality of video and voice can be a problem, and then the technological skills of the presenter is now an added concern. So as you go to recruit members to speak in front of your classes, ensure that they have the necessary skills and even the software on their computer. I've had issues where we use Zoom, yet the presenter only has WebEx on their computer. And so now there are challenges before the class has even started and students become disinterested. However, we reduce, on the benefit side, we reduce distance obstacles. And again, more diversity of thought, geography. The final point that I'd like to mention on the benefits is this recruitment of senior industry professionals. So more of a senior level CEO, CFO, they're willing to engage for an hour. Where we are, we're about 4 hours south of DC, where a lot of our industry members locate. That turns into a full day meeting for 1 hour class. By having a Zoom engagement, you're able to really access a higher level, a busier individual. We rethought our virtual industry presentations, and we had readopted a new framework. So what we do now, especially in our careers course, this is an entry level freshman year, we post pre-recorded industry member content. And that pre-recorded content is then assigned to the students to watch before class. We give them some task to do, whether it's writing a question, whether it's developing some type of analytical thought about the content itself. Then we host a virtual member synchronously in the class, where they're able to hold more of a question and answer instead of here's the content and then a less amount of time for Q&A. We've really liked to give the students the opportunity to engage with those members specifically. And what we have found that this framework leads to a more engaged student. We find that students have a higher level of comfort with the content itself. There's less anxiety with the student to, I guess, be considered on the spot, to have these content disseminated immediately to them, and then to say, okay, what questions do you have? Students feel very nervous about asking the dumb question in the class, and they're less likely to really explore the range and depth that they could. Pre-recorded content helps them, and they're able to provide this much wider breadth and discussion overall. So in my concluding slide, what I'd like you to take away from our presentation today is that student engagement can be improved in a virtual COVID-19 era. Adding student activities, adding polls, specifically developing case studies that align student content to their own interests and the interests of what the curriculum necessitates will promote student engagement. Establish clear expectations with your virtual teams. Make sure that your students understand exactly what you want them to do and how, and give them the flexibility to achieve those goals. And then finally, in this presentation, rethink industry member classroom integration. Integrate those members, bring them into your classes, but provide the necessary tools for your students to succeed. This is the content that we have for you today. Happy to engage in any future or further discussion that you have. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I see there are a number of questions here.
Are there? Oops, wrong button. No, there was a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any questions from the audience? Well, I have a question. You kind of for the more general framework, you kind of mentioned it but jumped over it very quickly, and this is the role of geography and the role of distance. You mentioned it with the industry partners, with their engagement, but doesn't the same thing also apply to students? Isn't it with that technology less important where the students physically really are, or where the lecturer is, or where the teaching material is, or where that has been developed? I think, well, this is something that I think we really should keep in mind for our discussion tomorrow about the future and the benefits and the road into the future, as something for us as an organization, as a group, to use to our benefit.
Absolutely. And the diversity of thought and of geography helps the classroom, not just from an industry member perspective, but also, as you say, from the faculty and from the industry members themselves. We did have a CEO from a UK development company present in one of our classes. And that would never have happened last year because Zoom was not acceptable. It wasn't something that you would do in a classroom environment. Now that it is acceptable, it really does broaden our abilities as faculty to expand our teaching models, who we bring into a class. It allows us to leverage.
Mm-hmm. We have something in the chat.
One comment, in my experience, one way to
around interactivity in breakout sessions is to require students to upload a discussion presentation file. What are your thoughts, experience in that regard?
Any activity where you can have students present what they're thinking, it helps. It helps other students understand what their expectations are, and it gives them a template and guidance. As long as you as the faculty member can discuss them and take the time to say, this uploaded material has worth, this is what I'm looking for. Otherwise, without it, students view it as a box checking exercise and no longer give it the amount of effort that it's worth. So absolutely, I like uploading for discussions as long as time is dedicated in the classroom to engage in that uploaded content.
How do you make professors engage more? Was that the question?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question. How do you make professors engage more? I think that can be in a physical environment as well as a digital environment. And I think part of the challenge in our virtual environment is the lost interaction before classes begin. In a physical environment, generally speaking, we walk around the classes as students enter, we greet them. I have found that greeting students by name when they enter a classroom helps just them to wake up and to be there. They actually appreciate that. And I've heard from student comments that they just like to be acknowledged for being there and to say, thank you for having your video on. I really thank you for that comment, always encouraging whatever we're trying to promote in that operant conditioning model, whether it's a chat room function that somebody is messaging you, or if it is a physical statement spoken out loud.